All right, here we go. Question 17 from our Precalculus homework number 12 in MyLab Math. They want us to solve this system of equations using Cramer's rule. And if I look ahead, you can see that they're going to want me to set up the fractions for the variables first, again using Cramer's rule, and then calculate the values. So let's go to the scratch work and explain what Cramer's rule is and how you execute it. So in a nutshell, here's what Cramer's rule says. It says, hey, do you want to find the solution for x? It's going to be d sub x over d. The answer for y, d sub y over d. And if you have three equations with three unknowns, the answer for z would be d sub z over d. Now, what do all of these d's, different d's, represent? Well, the d in the denominator, if you notice, those are all the same. That is the determinant of the coefficients of the variables. D sub x would be the determinant eliminating the x coefficients. D sub y would be the determinant eliminating the y coefficients. And d sub z would be the determinant eliminating the z coefficients. And that's a lot of talking. Let's actually put this into action and see how it works. Okay, so here I have copied down the equations that we were given in our particular problem. Notice that this is a system of two equations and two unknowns, so we're only going to need to find x and y, which indicates that we're going to have to find 1, 2, 3 determinants. These are going to be three 2x2 determinants based on, well, whichever one we're looking for. So we're going to start with what I call regular d, the d in the denominator, and that is the determinant of the coefficients of the variables. So that would be 1, 1, 1, negative 1. Those are the coefficients of x and y in the two different equations, and then you would calculate that 2x2 determinant. Now, I've covered that in a previous video. Real quick, the way that goes is with the fish technique. We're going to multiply starting at 1. 1 times negative 1. When you turn the corner, you put a minus, and then you go down on the other diagonal, 1 times 1. That would give us negative 1 minus 1, which is negative 2. Now remember, that's one of the three pieces needed. Next, we need to calculate d sub x. Now, if you recall what I said earlier, I said that d sub x is the determinant if you eliminate the x coefficients. So now we're not using the x's. Instead, we're going to use the constants. Okay, so do you understand where the x's would have been? We're now going to replace them with the constants, but we're still going to use the y coefficients of 1 and negative 1, and then we calculate this determinant. Again, doing the fish technique, that's going to be negative 6 minus 4 gives me negative 10, and next we need to find d sub y. And again, d sub y is going to be the determinant, but instead of using the y coefficients, we're going to use the constants. Just like previously we replaced the x's with the constants, now for d sub y, we're going to replace the y's with the constants, but we're going to go back to using the x coefficients, which were 1 and 1. And then we're going to do the determinant. Again, 4 times 1 is 4, 6 times 1 is 6, 4 minus 6, negative 2. And now that I have d sub x, and d sub y, I can plug into my fractions and calculate the point of intersection of these two lines. All right, here we go. For x, that's going to be d sub x divided by d, which ends up being 5. Y is d sub y divided by d, and that ends up being 1. And so as an ordered pair, that's going to give us a solution of 5 and 1. So now we need to go back and plug into our MyLab math these 3 determinants, and then we can plug in our solution. And again, forgive me if this is a little bit small, but I had to zoom out so that I could fit this all in one window. X, remember x was d sub x over d. D sub x was a determinant, so we're going to click on the determinant. And yeah, we need 2 rows and 2 columns. If this was a 3 equation and a 3 unknown, you would need to increase the number of rows and columns. Now, let's fill in for d sub x. That was 6 and 4 and 1 and negative 1. And then let's go ahead and do d sub y. Again, that was a 2 by 2 determinant where we used the x's, but we replaced the y's with the constants. And then the denominators are also 2 by 2 determinants, but this is regular d, which are the coefficients of the variables. 1, 1, 1, negative 1, and then this is going to be the same. And there you can see, once you have all of that input in the formula for Cramer's rule, we can check. And then it's going to ask me for the solution. So there was a solution. No, Cramer's rule is not applicable. No, it is applicable because we did get an answer, and the solution was 5, 1. And that's going to do it for this particular problem. So if you have any questions or comments about anything covered in this video, please feel free to leave those in the comment section below, or you can text me, and thanks for watching.